I'm glad you've come across this video. I hope you're going to find it very useful and helpful because it's teaching something that is very important to being a musician. Music comes in sets or in families, and on the piano we call these scales. We run up and down these sets or these groups of notes. And as students, they can get mind-numbingly boring and frustrating because the fingering gets confusing and you've got to remember which black notes and where to tuck your thumb and all this kind of stuff. So what I've done after many years of teaching and seeing students struggle with where to put fingers and what notes to play, I have recruited my favourite little ladybugs. I love these little guys. They are the perfect little shape for round fingers, which is exactly what we need for scales, to get your thumb tucking under so we can get to all the black and the white notes. So these guys are going to help heaps. I'll have heaps of those coming up with the fingerings and which notes to play at what times. So when you're doing scales, always think of why. Think of why, what the purpose is, why we do them, why we run up and down. Because yes, they are great finger exercises. They get your fingers fit, they get them nimble and moving around in funny places, but they also help you understand. They help you understand why things sound good in a particular piece, why composers use things in a particular way or a particular shape or pattern. So think of this whole layout like a playground. It's just like a very complicated playground and all the things look the same, but they've got different obstacle courses all the way through. So the obstacle courses have patterns in them. So I hope you enjoy these videos. I hope that it helps your fingers to play on these obstacle courses easier, and I hope you get a lot of enjoyment out of the ladybugs. So here we are, whole playground, 88 little steps that we can use. First thing to know about scales is that there are 7 letters in the musical alphabet, and every standard major scale and standard minor scale uses those 7 letters, one of each, and that's how we get the spelling, the correct names that we need for each one. C, easiest scale in the piano because it uses just the white notes. That's why most people start with C. If you start on the note C and step up and up and up and up, we eventually get back to C. There are 7 different letter names in there, and then the last one, the 8th one, is just the same letter name. So there's 7 different letters. Super important number to remember. So when we're doing a scale, obviously you've only got 5 fingers in one hand, unless you sort of grow 2 extras on the side. With 7, we have a group of 3 and a group of 4. So every one of your scales that we're going to talk about, there are 12 altogether. Every one of them has got that same pattern, a group of 3, group of 4, group of 3, group of 4. And our pinky comes along to sort of tag along at the end when it's needed. And the same with our left hand. So very first one, before I get talking about the whole pattern and the mathematical layout of it all, first one to remember, starting on C, we've got your right hand with your thumb on C, tucking under, and if we're just doing one octave, we have your pinky and we turn backwards. This ladybug shape is the perfect round shape so that your thumb can tuck underneath, and that's what we're aiming for all the time with every scale, no matter whether it's white notes or black. Left hand. So left hand, we're going to start with your pinky. We use up your 5 first, and then we use your 4 fingers and do the pattern of 4 and 3 and 4 and 3. So starting with your 5, and 3 goes over the top. And while we're talking about C, super easy one, a fun thing to do is like a butterfly scale where they both spread out away from each other like wings. So if you get your 2 thumbs, both of them starting on C, the fingering is exactly the same. It's a mirror image. 1, 2, 3, thumbs tuck under. And we'll use our pinkies on the outside. And we have to remember which one goes over 3 because we've already done the 4. And that's your basic C. Later on, we'll do the together. So we'll do that later. So C, your first one has got no sharps, no flats. There is a mathematical pattern, and in music we call these tones and semitones. So from C to D, you have a note in the middle. from D to E, we have a note in the middle. E to F, there is no note in the middle. We call that a semitone. It's half the distance. Even though the actual physical distance on the piano is the same, it's a semitone because there's no note in between. A tone is a full step. It's a whole step. It's easier for a guitarist or a cello player or a violin player to visualize this on a fingerboard, but on the piano, we have all these black and white notes in a particular pattern, and this is where people get confused because it's hard to see whether they're tones or semitones. So, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 and semitone. That particular pattern is what we use for every standard major scale. So we're just talking about Western major scales. The circle, the cycle of fifths, most famous picture when it comes to music theory. It's called the cycle of fifths because the way the pattern goes is from C, counting up a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we land on G. That's the next point around the clock, and our little ladybugs will help. They're going to walk around the clock and show you how many sharps to use or how many flats. When we start on G, if we follow that same tone, tone, semitone pattern, we have a tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. This has to be a tone, which means the note in between is a white note. So the seventh note, and semitone at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gets raised up. Every time we go around a new scale on the clock, our seventh note gets raised up. G scale, fingering is exactly the same as C. So a group of 3, group of 4, and we'll tag our little pinky on the end. And you can see why these guys need to be tucked in here, so there's plenty of room for your fourth finger to get up there. And coming backwards, we've already done a 4, so we're going to jump over with 3. Same deal with your left hand, but we start with 5. 3 notes to go, so we put your 3 over the top. We sharpen the F and backwards. Next one around the cycle is D. We're up to 2 sharps now. Every time we go around one point on the clock, the new note that gets raised adds an extra sharp to our key signature. So D, starting on D, same deal. This is a very comfortable one because look at this. There's our F sharp that we had before. We keep that, like a leftover from the G scale that we did. And it's the longest finger up on a black note, tuck under. Fourth finger is going to go on the new sharp. This is our newbie. This is our new friend of the family up on C sharp and backwards. Same deal with your left hand. We'll start with your 5 on D. And we've got your longest finger on the sharp this time. Use up all your fingers. Third finger goes over the top. And there's our new guy. There's the raised 7th. 7th note gets raised up and backwards. When you feel super confident with these particular ones, these first ones that I'll show you, you can start putting them all hands together. It just gets a bit more complicated when sometimes there's a sharp in one hand and not in the other. So there's something fun you can try, you can experiment with. Next one around the clock, we're up to A, 3 sharps. So we keep the 2 sharps that we had before, starting on A. Nice and comfortable, third finger's on C sharp. Here's our F sharp from before, and our new one is a G sharp. And backwards. So you can see we still have one of every single letter. A, B, C, which has been raised, D, E, which gets raised, G, which gets raised, and then the A. Left hand, starting with your 5. Now we're up to 4 sharps. The fingering is still the same. We're starting on a 5th up from A, B, C, D, E. Starting on E, we still have those 2 sharps close by. And the new guy is a D sharp. We don't have a D, we jump up to D sharp and backwards. So E is nice. We've got 2 little pairs. 2 little pairs of 2. And this guy's the odd one out. That is a special one. We will come back to him later when we get around the flat side. Left hand, pinky on E. This feels weird because your 4th finger suddenly has to stretch up. B is the next one, a 5th up from E. Counting up 5, we land on B. Apparently the famous composer Chopin used to teach his students by starting on B scale. He would actually show them, instead of starting on C, he would show them B scale because the fingering is extremely comfortable. Your thumb just gets the white notes and your pinky at the top, and the rest of it just fits really nicely under your hands because finally we get all 5 black notes. And it's really easy fingering. Your thumb starts on B. There's our 2 black notes together. Thumb on E. And we get these 3. There's our new one up the top. So just while we're talking about B, we have these white notes here, the semitones in here. A lot of people get confused with which white note your thumb's going to tuck under. With B scale, we only have a B and an E. So out of these guys here, we use the ones that are closest to that side of the black notes. They're kind of hugging the left side of the black notes. Left hand is a trick. If we start with your 5, up with your thumb on a black note. There is nothing wrong with having your thumb on a black note. It is just uncomfortable and it doesn't make it flow, especially if we want to go fast. So what we do with this, with left hand, is we give your pinky a holiday. Start off with 4. And that way your thumb lands nice and comfortably on the E. The trick is, if we can just continue with a 3, it's not going to work because we have the same problem. 3, 2, 1, and then problems. The trick is we stretch all the way over with a 4 and you've got just the right number of fingers for the 3 black notes and your thumb lands nice and comfortably. Backwards. So trick with B, your pinky has a holiday. He has a day off. Just curls around and relaxes. So B hands together is a bit trickier, but we'll look at together a bit later. We are at the bottom of the clock. At the bottom of the clock, the base of the clock, they kind of overlap. If you look at the picture, you've got 3 different sets of key signatures. They start overlapping with the sharp ones, the sharp names, and the flat names. Those 3 overlapping ones at the base are exactly the same scales. The sharp and flat name on each of those sounds exactly the same. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's just the spelling that's different. It's the way that it looks on the page. So some of them are easier to read, some of them just look like a nightmare. B has got 5 sharps. We call all of these sharps. If we call B a flat name, and this is where piano players often get very confused, if we give B a flat name, C flat, it ends up having 7 flats in the key signature because we have to spell it differently. It sounds and looks exactly the same, but on the page it's going to look totally different. And it's extremely rare. People don't tend to write stuff in C flat, but just so that you can understand the base of the clock, this would be called C flat, this would be called D flat, this one would be E flat, Trick one, this note here would be called F flat, so that we get one letter of each. G flat, A flat, B flat, and back to C flat. It is exactly the same as B. It just looks more complicated. 6 o'clock. We are at the bottom of the clock. 6 o'clock. We have 6 sharps or 6 flats. We're going to keep talking about sharps because something special happens with these white semitones in between. So a fifth up from B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to count the actual notes of the scale, not just white notes. It's the tone, tone, semitone, tone. So let's call this one F sharp to start off with. We have an F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Thumb's going to tuck under on good old B. So remember, out of these 2 white notes, it's the one that's hugging close to the 3 black notes. Next to 2 sharps, C sharp, D sharp. This next one is a trick. We had that weird name of C flat before. It can go the other way too. We have to give this an E name. To make it spell out properly on the page, we have to give that a name where the dot, the circle, looks like an E. So we call it E sharp. And then we're back to F sharp. So fingering wise, we have these 3 middle fingers. I'm going to tuck the other ones away. These 3 middle fingers always go on these 3. Whether it's here, or here, or here, or here. For the base of the clock, your 3 black notes always land with these 3 fingers. The 2s. For the base of the clock, your 2 and 3 always land on these notes. And your thumbs fill in the gaps, and like before, occasionally your pinkies if they don't have a day off. So if we're doing F sharp with your right hand, we start with your 2 because that matches with this fingering. There's your thumb on the white note. There's those 2 fingers on the 2 black notes, and your thumb tucks underneath. So this is definitely one your pinky has a holiday. So with the white notes here, can you see? We've got the 2 sets of white notes. We don't use these 2. It's like the 2 white notes. We have a B and we have an E sharp. It's like they're scared of the 2 black notes. They don't like them, so they're hugging the 3 black notes. They want to be close to the 3 black notes. And it sounds cool. Left hand. Your 4 is going to start off because we're starting with the 3 black notes. Thumb on the B. That's the only note that has a natural name. B is the only one that's just a plain old B. And there's our special E sharp. And just tucking over. If you're only doing 1 octave, which for the moment we are, you can just put your 2 and tuck straight back. So starting off with 4. And your pinky has a holiday. We just played that as F sharp. If we call it G flat, it still has 6 flats. So look at the spelling this time. Now we have G flat, A flat, B flat, good old C flat. We have to give it a C name. D flat, E flat, and tucking your thumb under again, plain old F. It just gets a plain F. That's the only one that's a natural note. If we call it G flat, that's the only natural one. And backwards. It's identical to F sharp. It's just spelled differently. Last one from the base of the clock where we get complicated explanations. Last one, a fifth up from F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C is pretty special. C is at the top of the clock. It has nothing, no sharps, no flats. C is also down the base of the clock. It's either got all flats or all sharps. So C is an all or nothing kind of key. If we're doing C sharp, we start off with the 2 fingers for the 2 black notes. Our next white note is an E sharp, not an F, it's an E sharp because we have to spell it the right way. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and the new one, the new raised 7th, is a B sharp. And back to C sharp. So every single note is a sharp. C sharp, B sharp, A sharp, G sharp, F sharp, E sharp, D sharp, C sharp. Very sharpy, very spiky. Left hand, we'd start with the 2 black note fingering again. And your thumb's going to be pushing further up this way because sharps always go up. So your thumb's not going to land on this one, it'll land on this one here. E sharp, big stretch, there's your 3 middle fingers. Same deal, we're wanting to push all of those white notes up because they're sharps. And we can just use a 2 over the top if we're coming straight back down. If we call it D flat, again, it's exactly the same scale. If we call it D flat, we're suddenly only up to 5 flat names. Those 2 white notes that were called sharps, they kept pushing up towards that end of the piano, they suddenly get natural names, just plain old F and plain old C. So if we spell this one as D flat, it goes D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, good old C, and back to D flat. Same deal with your left hand. Your thumb's going to just be pushing up further this way. And that's the end of the complicated overlap bit. The rest of the cycle going around, we're just getting rid of flats. We've done 7 flats. We had 7 flats for the key of C flat. We had 6 flats for the key of G flat. We've just dropped down to 5 flats for D flat. If we keep on counting around the cycle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we are up to A flat. The reason we don't bother calling this one G sharp scale is because we end up with weird spelling up here, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So, A flat scale, you can start with these ones, but it's much easier if we just go 2, 3. Because if you start with there, it feels like the other ones, but it'll confuse you. So we start with a 2 and a 3. We're doing the flat family, so we're not going to use the B anymore. It's already been used. It's called a B flat. We'll go up to C, D flat, E flat. We're going to tuck under again, which is going to feel weird because we've just done a little group of 3. Tuck under on the F. Instead of the G flat, we're not going to use that one anymore. Plain old G. So if you think about it, all the other scales we kept sharpening the top one. That's exactly what we're doing here. We used all the black notes before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We actually raise it. But the funny thing is, if we have a flat and we raise it, we sharpen it, it turns into a natural. And that's how the rest of the cycle going around, back to the top of the clock, that's how we get rid of flats as we go around. If we just kept adding sharps, the spelling would be like this. And you do not need to remember this is confusing, but I want you to understand this top bit. G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. The next note has to be called an F. And we can't call it F sharp, we'd have to call it F sharp sharp or double sharp. And that gets confusing. We have a little cross, and that sometimes happens in music, but it's too complicated for writing out a scale. We just call them flats. So this one, I like starting with a 2 because it's just easier. When we do more than one octave, you'll end up with different fingers up there, but we'll come to that later. So A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat. We had 2 little pairs of black notes in there, tucking under, getting rid of black notes, and coming back. So in this one, if we're just doing 1 octave, you can actually have these 2 having a holiday. It'll change when we do 2 octaves. Left hand, if you look at this, we have 1, 2, 3 notes before your thumb's going to hit a white note. So we start with your 3. The next bit is confusing. With your left hand, it feels like you should jump over with your 3 and your 2. If you jump over with your 3 and your 2, we suddenly have a problem of not having an extra thumb on the side to hit this G. So what people do is they go 3 here, just like this, as if you're doing a group of 3. But your left hand's going to do something that's going to feel very strange after the other black note scales, we go 4, 3, 2 and 1, and that way your thumb easily lands on the white notes. And for now we're just going to put your 2 over the top. Backwards. Here's a group of 4 fingers, and tucking under, here's a group of 3. Moving around, we're getting less flats this time. We've done 4, we're down to 3 flats. Counting up from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're up to E flat scale. These are so much easier just to start with your 2. From now on, your right hand's just going to start with a 2 because your thumb gets to tuck straight under on a white note. So E flat scale, we have a black, white. We still have these 2 whites from before. These are the next 2 flats that we still use. We're going to tuck underneath. We did use D flat before, but it's going to get raised up to a plain old D. And there's the top, E flat, and backwards. So we have a group of 3 fingers. Big, big, big stretch. Your 4 is going to go over. And because it's the end, we can just use a 3. Use a 2. When we're going to keep on going, we would use different fingers. Left hand, we have 3 notes before we have to go over the top. So we start off with a 3 because we've got 3 fingers. Before we have to go over with a 4, big, big stretch. There's our new raised 7th, which is a natural, and then over the top, backwards. Coming backwards is so easy with your left hand because your thumb just tucks straight under after the black note. Tucks under again. We're down to 2 black notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So B flat scale has got 2 black notes. We start off with B flat. Going up with your right hand is easy because the thumb tucks under. It feels easy because your thumb desperately wants to tuck under after a black note. So there's our B flat. Tucking under to the C. E flat, big stretch to tuck under. And there's our 3 black notes there, and the 7th note is raised up. And that's where it finishes, on B flat, backwards. So a group of 4. And a group of 3. And because it's the end, we can just go to 2. Left hand, we have 3 notes before we have to dive over the top, so we use finger number 3. 4th finger jumps over. And because it's the top, we can just finish with a 2 and turn it around and tuck back. Coming backwards is easy. We have our group of 4 fingers. And then tucking under, group of 3 fingers. We have 1 more to go and we're back to where we started. F scale has got 1 flat in it. Right hand is annoying because it looks like it should be the same fingering that we did for C. Group of 3, and then group of 4, and your pinky. The problem with F is if we go 1, 2, 3, the new flat is actually way, way, way up here. And you have to tuck your thumb under in a weird kind of fashion. It's possible, but annoying. So what people do is they start with the group of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the only black note left. It's the last one left. Tucking under, all the way under here, under the C. And this is one of those ones where your right hand pinky has a holiday. It's a white note scale, but we stop there because it's an octave. That's a full octave. So 4. And then 4th finger over the top. Left hand is easy. Left hand is the same fingering that we had for all those other white note scales like C and G and D. So we start with your 5. There's the 1 remaining black note, not last little B flat. And your 3 goes over the top. And you land nicely on your thumb on the F at the top. count up from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're back to C again, and if we take away that last flat, you're back to all naturals. And you could just keep going around and around forever. One, two, ready, go.